In today's lesson, we're going to be looking at titrations. Now the problem is titration is a volumetric piece of chemistry work, and in order to do that you need to have accurate measurements. So we're going to measure as accurately as we can.
Yes.
So what I've done is I've made an equipment's video for you for a preamble before you do the real video. And we're going to post this up before we post the real video up of the experiment.
By about a day, hopefully.
By about a day, hopefully. All going well. Obviously, we're going to need some chemicals to do the titration with. Now, the titration is based on what you did in the first video, so you do actually need to do that first video if you haven't done it yet.
Yeah, red cabbage indicator.
So you need to make yourself some red cabbage indicator solution, even if you don't do the rest of the video, because you're going to need that for today. You're also going to need some clear vinegar.
I think we should leave a link to it in the description.
Oh yeah, there will be a link to it in the description. Okay, so this is clear vinegar. The one that I'm using is labelled white wine vinegar. You can use what's known as distilled vinegar, and you could just about get away with cider vinegar if you've got it. This contains ethanoic acid. Okay, so for the GCSE level students, this is ethanoic acid. Now in a lab you wouldn't use ethanoic acid, but on the equipment list, which there is a link to in the description of the video, it tells you what you would use in a lab when you're doing this experiment. After all, we have mentioned before, this is one of the required practicals for GCSE. We're going to be using as our base to react with that acid sodium carbonate. Okay, sodium carbonate is often known as bicarbonate of soda. So it comes in pots like this from your supermarket, bicarbonate of soda. You buy it as bicarbonate of soda. Do not buy baking powder instead, and try not to substitute anything else, any other raising agents that might be on the shelves. You need the one that's called bicarbonate of soda. It's fairly pure sodium carbonate, but it does have some extra bits and pieces in it. Okay, so it's got impurities in it. Whereas my white wine vinegar, my ethanoic acid, says that it's 99% pure. That doesn't mean to say that the concentration of ethanoate in salt in there is actually 99%. So it's not actually giving us the concentration of ethanoic acid in the liquid. So normally when you do this in a lab, you would know what concentration one of your solutions was. We're going to pretend we know what concentration this is.
But we don't really.
But we don't really. Okay. So other things that you might find useful. If you've got electronic scales are really good because these weigh to 1 gram. Okay, so that's 1 gram units. Now that is accurate to 1 milliliter. And you do need to set your units to grams before you start. So check your units button and make sure that it's set to grams. Now even if you're working in the US where you use fluid ounces and stuff, your scales should be able to set to grams, okay? Now the reason why we work with grams is because we're looking at metric there, and it's got a complete metric unit calibration with volumes of liquid. So 1 milliliter of liquid is the same as, this is of water particularly, obviously not mercury. 1 milliliter of water weighs 1 gram. Okay, so that's important. If you can get electronic scales, that's really good, all to the better. If you can't, then the accuracy of a measuring jug doesn't go all the way down below 100 mils. So you're going to be working with at least 100 millilitres of water in your measuring jug at all times, and do a subtraction to work out how much you've actually used, because obviously this is volumetric. I will explain how to do that when I do the practical with you, and it will be in the notes for the real practical. Now, we need, usually when you're doing a titration, you would have a conical flask. We're using an empty jar. Any empty jar will do, but this one is a vintage jar. It once had homemade strawberry jam in it.
I don't think they need to know.
They probably don't. I just thought that was a funny thing to add. Okay, so you're going to need your red cabbage indicator as well. As you can see, we've got one of our pipettes in here. Now, if you've got a science set, you've probably got some of these plastic graduated pipettes in your science set. Do grab some of those if you've got them. If you haven't, you may remember from the last video that we said that
Syringes.
these types of syringes, which are graduated to a small amount, you can find in children's medicine bottles. Okay. If you've ever had a pet who's been ill, you might find that your medication for the pet has come with a syringe like this. Okay, so you can measure it out more accurately, and you'll see that this is actually a 1 ml graduated syringe, as has been used quite a lot, so it's actually quite difficult to see the graduations readings now, but I know what they are. Try and make sure that yours, yeah, magic mum, yeah, try and make sure that yours aren't. Now don't forget that you can actually pull them apart like this. And we're going to cut the video there and do that bit again because somebody's at the door. Okay, so that was exciting.
Yeah.
We just had a knock at the door. A parcel. Yeah, we had to explain why we've got our front windows blocked out with wood because I thought that was a bit rude, really.
We're not taking the apocalypse that seriously.
Yeah, we're worried about zombies, really. Yeah. Anyway, so that's silliness aside, back to the equipment that you need. So, what we need is a stirring stick of some description. Now, I've got an old chopstick here. You don't have to use a chopstick. I'm using a chopstick because it's convenient. I have got them. They're made of bamboo. They don't absorb very much. You can use those little coffee stirrers that you get at coffee shops. You know the ones I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Right, now, can you think of anything else that might be useful as a stirring stick?
The ends of spoons and forks.
The ends of spoons and forks. The handle end, not the actual...
Would a knife work? A knife blade?
Knife blades could, but they tend to be too wide. And also, you don't really want to be using a knife blade because you might cut yourself.
There's the pair of scissors.
Okay. Oh yeah, there's a pair of scissors over there. And no, that wouldn't work.
Well,
you could use a handle of a paintbrush. This one's a bit fat. So if you've got a thinner paintbrush handy, you could use the handle of a thin paintbrush.
Pipette?
Well, you can, but your liquid goes up the pipette and then gets stuck up there. And if you've got a reaction going on, then you don't really want to lose some. When you're doing a volumetric reaction, you don't want to lose any of your ingredients up inside a pipette. So yeah, something that your reactants will drip off easily is actually what you're looking for.
Yes, so something thin.
And not thin so that it doesn't bring up too many of your reactions out of your reacting jar. Okay, now that's in case you need to stir it. Hopefully you won't need to stir it because we're going to use swishing to stir because that's
swishing.
That's the standard way of stirring when you're doing titrations is to swish.
Swish.
Yeah, like this. Okay, so you'll notice I've got a plate. So if I just get close to you there, you'll see that my plate is actually white. It's important if you are going to use a plate that you use a white one, or just get a piece of white paper.
Or a tile.
Or a white tile if you've got one. You might not have a white tile, that's quite rare actually, but anything white over the top of your plate, you can tape it in place if it's a piece of white paper, and that's because you need to see the colour change clearly, and you'll see the colour change better on a white background than you will do on a coloured background. Okay, so, and there's the red cabbage indicator waiting. Now I've got a different type of jug here. It doesn't matter what your jug is like, and if you're using small amounts you can get away with these little pudding pots if that's all you've got, but I suspect you'll manage to empty a jar out. We empty jars out all the time. So summary: acid, vinegar; alkali, bicarbonate of soda, also known as sodium carbonate. Weighing scales, preferably electronic if you've got them, because that's going to be our main way of measuring our quantities. Jugs also work nicely. You're going to need a jug for your solution of bicarbonate of soda that you're going to make up anyway, so you'll need at least one jug. Other things to do: careful measuring of your
syringe,
of your indicator solution, because we only need very small volumes of that. A mixing jar, and something white to put your mixing jar onto. Okay, so we've got that. Oh, and of course, A stirring stick.
Stirring
Just in
stick.
case you decide you need to have a stirring stick.
Stirring stick.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for watching. The video will be out in hopefully a day.